Hello everyone, I Kuldeep Sharma welcome you all to today's session of Hindu News Analysis, where we will look at the important news topic which from the today's current Hindu newspaper. So let's start with the first news, the first important news. So I know it has been oft repeated many a times this year because it is a very important news item for this year regarding the Citizenship Amendment Act and the rules which have recently been notified by Ministry of Home Affairs through which this CAA becomes applicable in the country. So let's do an overview of CAA. So Citizenship Amendment Act was passed in the year 2019 and its rules were notified by Ministry of Home Affairs, also known as CAA rules, on March of this year, 11th March of this year. So there was certain clarification required regarding these rules also, because although they give some clarification from the act, but the rules further required clarification and the MHA is coming up with certain notification providing you with the clarification. Moreover, there is a new helpline number which has been launched if anyone has any suggestion or any clarification required with regard to implementation of this act. And please remember this helpline number, which is 1032, which could be a direct question in your exam, in any of the exams. What is the helpline number for CAA? So it is 1032. So some facts about the Citizenship Amendment Act 2019 are that it is basically applicable for 3 countries only, which is Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh. So if you are a non-Muslim, remember, if you are a non-Muslim persecuted minority, that is these countries, the government in these country is doing discrimination with you, then if you have come to India before the date of 31st December 2014, so if you have come before this date into India without a passport or a visa, then you would be given citizenship. You could be, or you would be eligible for Indian citizenship on lesser important grounds. For example, when a foreigner gets a citizenship of India, that is known as getting citizenship by naturalization. So Indian citizenship can be awarded in 4 ways. One is by birth, second is by descent, third is by registration, which is for person of Indian origin, and the fourth is naturalization process, which is for the foreigners. So for the purpose of naturalization, the requirement for residence in India is, for general cases, it is 12 years. However, as per Citizenship Amendment Act 2019, for these categories of people, it would be only of 5 years. Moreover, the other requirement is, even if you have entered India illegally, for example, without a passport or without a visa by the India government, these 2 conditions can also be are also not a requirement when you are applying under Citizenship Amendment Act 2019. So what is this news about? So apart from this, there are certain other requirements which have been given under the Citizenship Amendment Act rules. So one is the requirement of eligibility certificate. So if any of this illegal migrant entered India, then he has to show an eligibility certificate which can be issued by any locally reputed community institution, which will help to validate the religion of that person. And the Hindu, Hindu personnel called this helpline number and asked him who can actually give this eligibility certificate. So the reply was, any pujari can even provide this certificate, which means a pujari from a locally reputed community institution, a pujari, it can be a priest also, priest in a church also, those can provide you with an eligibility certificate validating your religion. So this is one requirement. Other requirement is an affidavit. So affidavit is usually a person provides an affidavit when he wants to make a statement on which he can be taken to a court. So that affidavit usually is for providing that yes, you were a bona fide citizen of these 3 countries, and yes, now you are going to become a legally bounded citizen of India and you are going to follow the rules of India. That is provided in an affidavit. Okay, so these are some of the requirements which have been a new update into the Citizenship Amendment Act rules. Now let's move to the next topic. Next topic is regarding this case which has come up. So although it's a state level news, it's a state news, however my focus is here is on a term known as masala bonds. So to understand what is masala bonds, first you should know what is a bond. So bond in financial literacy is a financial instrument. It's a financial instrument which is actually started by, which is actually issued by an investor to a borrower. I will correct myself. So it is issued by a borrower and finally investor buys it. So investor buys it from a borrower. Okay. So for example, it can be a company who has issued a bond. Reliance has issued a bond and I buy that bond. So I will be the investor who is investing in this company with the help of a bond. In other words, I can actually say that bond is an instrument for loans. So it's an instrument which is recognized as a loan. Another important thing regarding a bond is that usually there is a definite period for which it is valid. For example, a bond can be for 1 year. So once a year is completed, it becomes mature, which is known as maturity, date of maturity. And when the date of maturity of a bond arrives, you can actually take that bond to that company and you can encash it. So that is the definition of a bond. Now let's understand what is a masala bond. So these fancy terms are used in international finances so that the bond becomes recognizable with a country. For example, as you can see, masala, which is an Indian term for spices, which means masala bond must be relating to India. So if I ask you with which country does samurai bonds relate to, you must be having some hint because samurai relates to Japan. And same dim sum, which we call momos in India, dim sum bonds actually relates to China. So what are these bonds? So masala bond would be a bond issued by a company in a non-Indian or a foreign territory. In a non-Indian or a foreign territory. However, the difference would be from a different bond would be that it would be denominated in Indian rupee. It would be denominated in Indian rupee. So whatever is the bond, its value would be denominated or mentioned in terms of rupees and not in terms of dollar or any other currency. That's what a masala bond is. Similarly, a samurai bond would be in the yen and a dim sum bond would be in yuan, which are the currencies of those countries. So that was an explanation which I wanted to give you through this. Next is another case which is going on, which was actually decided by the Supreme Court. So there is this one former mayor. There was one former mayor of a municipal council. And actually he was given a bail. He was given bail by Odisha High Court. So Odisha High Court gave him bail in a criminal case of 2022, wherein one of the conditions for giving that bail, so whenever a bail is given by the court, it can provide some conditions. For example, let's say someone has committed a big crime and the court does not believe that that person would come back to court whenever asked to come. So it can ask that accused to not leave the boundaries of that state. So these kind of conditions can be put up. However, in this criminal case, when the bail was given, he was a politician and the court asked him to not get involved in any political activities. So not get involved in political activities directly or indirectly. This was one of the conditions for bail. So when this condition was put up, he again went to the Odisha High Court and asked to please reconsider your decision. However, the Odisha High Court denied it. So finally, he went to the Supreme Court, which is the highest court of the land, and a 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court, headed by B.R. Gavai, who is the Supreme Court judge, they stated that such a condition is actually violative of fundamental rights. such a condition violates fundamental rights which are guaranteed by the constitution and cannot be taken away in any sense. Which means the court has said that participation in political activity, which means the court has stated that participation in political activity is part of your fundamental right. And if you have gone through part 3 of the constitution, which talks about fundamental right, there is this one article 19 clause 1 clause A, which talks about freedom of speech and expression. And participating in political activity is actually part of freedom of speech and expression, which the court stated in this case, which means no such condition of bail could be used by the court. And the court should pay attention that no such condition should be put in future also. Let's move to the next next news item. So next news item relates to one of the statement which was made by Minister of Home Affairs Amit Shah in Jammu and Kashmir, wherein he said that we might remove application of AFSPA from Jammu and Kashmir. So from this we get to know that there is some act known as AFSPA. So let's look at the full form of this. So the full form of AFSPA is Armed Forces Special Powers Protection Act, and it's an act of 1958. So this act is protected by Article 34 of the Constitution, which provides for martial law, which provides for application of martial law in an area of a country. So what does this do? So it actually provides power to armed forces. It provides power to armed forces to maintain public order in disturbed areas. So what does it majorly does? It gives power to the armed forces of India, which includes your paramilitary forces also, like your BSF and CRPF, to maintain public order in a disturbed area. And what is a disturbed area? So disturbed area can be defined as an area in a state wherein the local authorities are not able to maintain law and order, which means the local police is insufficient to maintain law and order in that area. In that cases, that area can be declared a disturbed area, and as per AFSPA, armed forces has special powers to maintain public orders. And second question would be, which is the authority who can declare a disturbed area? So till 1970s, the power was with the state government, but now it is with the center, which means it is with the Ministry of Home Affairs. So Ministry of Home Affairs has the power to declare any area as a disturbed area, and in that area the armed forces get special powers. The most controversial aspect of this Armed Forces Special Power Act is that no legal proceedings can be instituted against the armed forces without permission of the center, which means even if someone has done an illegal act, a member of armed forces has done an illegal act, without permission of center, no one can file a case against those. That's why it is in very much controversy. So let's look at the applicable areas in which it is applicable right now. So since as per the news, we now know that it is applicable in Jammu and Kashmir, parts of Jammu and Kashmir, and in all the 7 states except Tripura and Meghalaya. AFSPA is actually applicable in all the northeastern states, in some states fully and in some states partially it is applicable. So this is what I wanted to cover from AFSPA. Next news. So next news is regarding one of the very important central sector scheme known as MG Narega or Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme or Act. So MG Narega scheme came up in the year 2005, and by one statement you can totally cover the scheme. So it is a 100-day guaranteed,
we can definitely demand
100 days guaranteed employment scheme for every rural, not urban, every rural household, and not a person, every rural household who is ready to do, manual unskilled labor. So by this one line, you can actually summarize the whole of the scheme. What does it provide? It guarantees 100 days of work to every rural household who is ready to work as a manual unskilled labor. So if you are not getting work anywhere, you can actually apply, and you belong to a rural area, then you can actually apply and get 100 days of guaranteed works. This new government has actually notified revised wages under the MGNREGA. So let's look at the funding pattern of it. Since it's a center sector scheme, 100% of labor cost is paid to the labor is bore by the center. So all of it is actually provided by the center. And after the material cost, 75% is given by the center and rest is actually taken up by the states. However, since it's also a political scheme, that the impact of such a scheme on politics of a state is also high. Apart from the wages which are announced by the center, the states also provide over and above that scheme, because of which the rate of MGNREGA is different in different scheme. For example, Haryana presently has the highest wage rate in MGNREGA, while it is MP and Chhattisgarh which is having the lowest, and the difference is about 150 rupees between these two states when it comes to amount of wages given under MGNREGA. So that was the news which was to be covered here. Now let's look at the next news item. So next news item is a good news for India, that it has achieved 16% decline in new TB cases since 2015. So it gives us an opportunity to study some facts about TB. So TB, which stands for tuberculosis, is caused by a bacteria known as Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So if you will do the 20 GK questions today and look at that video, there a question has also been asked there also, which of the following causes TB. So I've asked you, is it bacteria, is it virus, both A and B, or is it fungi? So the answer there would be bacteria, because it is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Next important fact is that it is a contagious disease, that it can transfer or travel from person to person. Second important fact is that it is treatable and curable. It can be fully cured and can be fully treated also. Next is the vaccine which is used to vaccinate against TB is known as the BCG vaccine, which is also used in India. Apart from it, the Indian government has launched a national strategic plan to eliminate TB for TB. National strategic plan for TB, and the goal is to eliminate it by 2025. However, the global goal as per WHO, it is 2030. Moreover, there is a Nikshay program. So wherever you find this word Nikshay, remember that it is related to elimination of TB and has been launched by Government of India. So these are some of the facts. Apart from it, there is one big problem in treating TB, that is the drugs, that is the bacteria, the Mycobacterium tuberculosis bacteria is becoming resistant. So like viruses, it also has different strains, different types of bacteria. So some of the strains of this TB virus, TB bacteria has become resistant to the initial level of medicine, which means it is actually had developed into different kind of TB. First, the second stage, the second higher level of TB is known as multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, which means that the first line of treatment does not work in the patients who are actually affected by MDR-TB, multi-drug resistant. And some of the bacterial strains are actually have become resistant with the second line of treatment also, because of which extremely multi-resistant drug TB has also been developed, in which even the third line of drugs, heavy doses of drugs, also does not work, which is actually making treatment of TB very difficult. Now let's look at the next news. So recently it has been reported by WMO, World Meteorological Organization, that the year 2024, the current year's January and February month were the hottest ever. So as you may know that WMO keeps a record of the warmest year. So again, from 20 GK question also, there was a question here. So WMO has declared one of the year as the hottest year on record, and that was the last year, 2023. And an important fact regarding 2023 was that the average increase in temperature from normal was more than 1.45 degrees Celsius. So if someone asks you what is the average temperature of Earth, you can say it is around 14 to 15 degrees Celsius. And if you understand, if you have heard of the term, I'm sure you have heard it, global warming. Climate change, global warming, it is a phenomena which is happening right now in front of our eyes. You can see the climate pattern is changing very quickly. So because of global warming, the temperature is increasing very high, and it is becoming very difficult for flora and fauna and for human beings to have a sustainable living. Because of which the international community has come forward and has started many programs. For example, there is this organization, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, under which we have conference of parties. So all the countries come together once a year, and therein they have a conference wherein they decide what action we should take in future so that the global warming can be restricted. So there was this one COP of 21 which took place in 2015 in Paris. The conference of parties number 21, which took place in the year 2015 in Paris, resulted in Paris Agreement, wherein all the countries found out that climate change is a big issue and there is a need that we need to restrict the increase in temperature by some degree, and therein they decided that the goal should be that the average temperature of Earth should not increase 2 degrees Celsius, and we should try not to increase it by 1.5 degrees Celsius, because if we cross 2 degrees Celsius, then it would be very hard for us to finally reduce the temperature back to Earth. So since in 2023 we have already crossed 1.45 degrees Celsius, which is very near to 1.5 degrees Celsius, it is actually making the scientists worry that soon enough we would even be crossing 2 degrees Celsius, and it would be a turning point. It would be a turning point in the history of climate change. So that's why these points become very important for you. Now let's look at the next topic. So next topic is regarding FDI or foreign direct investment. So recently Finance Ministry has reported that there has been a drop in FDI in India. So foreign direct investment which was coming into India has actually seen a drop, and it has said that it is not just India, it is a global trend. However, this heading can be deceptive. There is a global trend of drop in FDI in developing countries. So this should have been a complete headline, that the global trend is regarding a drop in developing countries. However, developed countries out of turn has seen an increase in FDI, and the global FDI inflow had actually increased by 3% overall. Okay, so let's understand what is FDI. So foreign direct investment is basically investment by a foreign company into India. So an example would be Pepsi or Coca-Cola, or McD, which are US companies, and they come up into India and open a store. So US companies, they come up into India and they open up their store, or they open up a manufacturing facility. For example, Apple has started to manufacture iPhones in a facility in India. That would be an example of FDI. Parallel to this FDI, there is another kind of foreign investment which is known as FPI, foreign portfolio investment. So in a direct investment, usually an investment is made into a manufacturing industry or in some company. However, when it comes to portfolio investment, it is rather than a direct investment into a company, it is indirectly investing into stocks. stocks and shares of a company or in the share market. So bonds, etc. would be part of FPI. And FDI and FPI, if you may know, forms part of capital account of a country. So capital account consists of those items which are for the long term. So FDI, FPI, loans and grants and aid. All of these are part of your capital account, which is in part of your balance of payment account of a country. The other is your current account. So usually you must have heard this news also that India is facing a current account deficit, and usually there is a capital account surplus, and whatever extra is left is the part of foreign exchange only. So this was the news regarding FDI. Now let's come to the next international news. So there has been an agreement between China and Sri Lanka, wherein China has said that it is going to develop a Sri Lanka's deep sea port and an airport also. So some important facts regarding this is the port which is being developed by China is known as Hambantota Port. So actually when China got the contract to develop this Hambantota Port, which is actually in the constituency of former Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, former President and Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Rajapaksa, there was uproar in India and US because that port was located very near to communications line. Hambantota Port is somewhere here, and by developing of Hambantota Port by China, China was directly sitting at the mouth of the Indian Ocean and could influence US and India's policy or India's role in the Indian Ocean. That's why there's some issue. So China is actually now developing Hambantota Port as well as the Colombo Airport. So the Colombo Airport, which was earlier being developed by Japan, but the work was stopped after there was this sovereign debt issue. So now it is Colombo's airport and Hambantota seaport is being developed by China. So one is what India is doing. So India is also not far behind, and India's Adani Group has got a contract to actually develop Colombo Port. So Colombo Port is already big. So it is being expanded by India's Adani Group, and it's a $700 million project which is being developed by India. So these are some of the facts which relate to this news item. Let's move to the next news item. So next item is regarding Competition Commission of India. So there is one news where the Competition Commission of India is actually conducting a probe against fintech entities like your Paytm, etc. All of these are whatever technology companies which are involved in finances would be part of fintech entities, and there has been certain complaints regarding that fintech companies are actually getting involved in anti-competitive practices, and thus it becomes the priority, it becomes the role of CCI to stop such kind of activities. So let's study some facts about CCI or Competition Commission of India. So Competition Commission of India came into being by CCI Act of 2002, and it actually replaced another previous act, Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act of 1959. So it was an old act and this act replaced it. What is the main objective of the Competition Commission of India? First is to stop abuse of dominant position. So let's say if a company, for example Google, has become so big that it has started to abuse dominant position. For example, let's say there is no other player, or let's say you are only dependent on Google for its services, then the Google start charging exorbitant prices for its services. That would be considered as abuse of dominant position. Second, very obvious, is avoiding anti-competitive practices. For example, an example of anti-competitive practice would be creating a monopoly in the market or a duopoly in the market, or creating a cartel in the market. For example, it's an actual case where CCI actually imposed cost on the people involved. So the cement industry in India, the companies of cements in India actually formed a cartel, and they decided the minimum and maximum price for a cement bag, because of which the customers were not able to get proper competitive prices in the market. So these are two of the main objectives of CCI. The third is to regulate mergers and acquisition So let's say two companies, for example, I'm just giving a hypothetical example. Let's say Facebook and WhatsApp would have been Indian company, and by merger of Facebook and WhatsApp, there would have been adverse impact on competition in social media sector. Then in such cases, the Competition Commission of India can look into the deal and can decide whether such merger and acquisition should be allowed or not. So these are some of the objective of CCI. Apart from it, its headquarter is in New Delhi, and since it's a quasi-judicial body, what is a quasi-judicial body? So a body, a legislative or an executive body which is function like a judiciary. So what does CCI do? So let's say if a company is not following these directives, then it can actually punish it, and punishment is the work of the judiciary, and it is, since it is doing a similar kind of work, that's why it is known as quasi-judicial body. And this quasi-judicial body consists of one chairperson and 2 to 6 additional members can be appointed. And one important fact regarding CCI is its chairperson. So the current CCI chairperson is Ravneet Kaur. It is Ravneet Kaur, and she is actually the first woman to become the chairperson of Competition Commission of India. That's why she becomes an important personnel. So that's it from CCI. Now let's move to the next news, which is regarding Rohingya refugee Muslims. So again, a question was also framed in the 20 GK question. So since you must be seeing that most of the topics which I am teaching you here are also there also, because one reason is that these are important topics, and we are also trying to create a synergy so that you do not have to you get multiple readings of the same important topic at different places. That's why you will see that many topics are oft repeated here and there. So Rohingya Muslims is actually a ethnic minority of Myanmar. And you must know that Myanmar is actually right now in a civil war. So if you have heard of this person, Aung San Suu Kyi, she is a Nobel Prize winner as well as Ramon Magsaysay Award winner, as well as winner of Indira Gandhi Peace Prize also. She is a winner of these awards, and actually she was the former president of Myanmar. And currently she is in jail, exile, because the military government is known as military junta, has taken over the country. And one thing on one ground on which they have taken over the country is that the Rohingya Muslims has created a terrorist organization that is known as Arakan Army, and it was actually trying to cause disturbances in Rakhine state of Myanmar. And this became a ground for military junta that we have to stop these terrorists to disturb the area, so we are taking out the government. So on that ground they take away. So what has happened is, because the military was targeting Rohingya Muslims in that region, Rohingya Muslims started to leave their country and started to move to different countries. And their first stop became Bangladesh, because that was the nearby country. And the second stop became India and the other countries in the Indian subcontinent like Indonesia and Malaysia. So this has come up in news because there was one Indonesian Navy ship which actually saved certain Rohingya Muslims who were trying to flee the Bangladesh camp which had been set up by the Bangladesh authorities. So out of this, one more information has come up that as per International Organization of Migration, the leading cause of death of illegal migrants or migrant has been for the last 10 years is drowning, because most of the people actually move through oceans and ship, and since they do not have money, they create their own ships and try to cross such heavy seas and oceans and finally drown in that area, and they are not able to reach their destination. So this was regarding Rohingya refugees. Now let's come to the second last news, which is regarding Mohiniyattam. So there is one famous institute in Kerala known as Kerala Kalamandalam, which is an organization of arts and culture in the state of Kerala, and it has taken a historic decision. Earlier this Kalamandalam was only for women or girls. However, now it has allowed boys also to come and learn Mohiniyattam, which is the classical dance of Kerala. So Kerala is the only state in India which has 2 classical dances. So this gives an opportunity to go through the classical dances of India. So let's look at the 8 classical dances of India. So first one is Bharatnatyam, which is from the state of Tamil Nadu. Next is your Kathak, which is from Uttar Pradesh or in the north of India. Third is your Kathakali, which is from Kerala. Fourth is Mohiniyattam, which is again from Kerala. So 2 classical dances are from Kerala. Next is your Kuchipudi, which is from Andhra Pradesh. Odissi, which is from Odisha. Satariya, which is a classical dance form of Assam. And finally Manipuri, which is a classical dance form of Manipur. So these are the 8 classical dances recognized by Ministry of Culture. So this list of 8 classical dances is by Ministry of Culture, which recognizes 8 classical dances. And now let's come to the last news. So since IPL season is going on right now, in yesterday's match between SRH and MI, one thing happened, which was that one team, which was the SRH or your Sunrisers Hyderabad, made the highest innings total. So this team made the highest innings total of 277, which is the highest ever one team record in the IPL history. And such kind of news are also covered because some sports section also has question in your CLAT and ALET exam. So class, that's it for from my side for today. I hope to see you in the next section. Thank you and have a very nice day.